I was just a young child in elementary school. It was a day we had practiced for, but no amount of preparation could have readied us for what unfolded. Our school went into lockdown because of an armed intruder, a threat that felt unreal until that moment. My teacher, Mrs. Anderson, had us move to the corner of the classroom, away from the windows and the front door. Then the lights were turned off, just as we had practiced. As we huddled together, our small bodies trembled with fear. For the first few minutes, everything went just as we had practiced. But after those first few minutes, there was something different this time. A classmate, Marshall, began audibly freaking out in the back of the room. Marshall was a classmate with level 3 autism, a condition that sometimes made him anxious during these drills, but never in practice had he been like this to such a degree. We tried to quietly calm him down, to reassure him that everything would be okay. We whispered softly and tried to offer comfort, but as more and more classmates fearfully joined in to help, our efforts only seemed to intensify his outburst. Mrs. Anderson addressed the class, her face calm. She told us to remain quiet, to follow the lockdown procedure. Everyone instinctively followed her orders. Everyone except for Marshall. I glanced around the room, taking in the wide-eyed fear that mirrored my own. In the dimness, tears welled up in the eyes of my classmates. Their small shoulders shook with silent sobs, and their faces contorted with the agony of fear. Some of us reached out to offer comfort, their trembling hands trying to soothe friends with side hugs and back rubs. But they were equally on the brink of tears, a collective effort to find solace in one another's company. With a determined yet anxious expression, the teacher approached Marshall. Her hands trembled ever so slightly as she reached out and grabbed him, and a heavy silence descended upon the room. Everyone watched in stunned silence as the scene unfolded before their eyes. Marshall resisted, his small body wriggling, and his voice rising in a terrified cry as she began to drag him toward the doorway. But her grip was unwavering, and despite his desperate struggles, he couldn't break free from the relentless force that seemed to control his fate. The door creaked open, revealing a world outside that felt just as terrifying as the chaos within. In one final desperate act, the teacher pushed Marshall out into the unknown, and the abrupt absence of his presence within the room felt like a void. His wailing and frantic pounding on the door filled the room, drowning out all other sounds, as if his fear and desperation had become the collective voice of our own unspoken dread. Our classroom erupted into chaos. Some of my classmates burst into tears, most others started to scream, and only a few brave souls continued to try and comfort those around them. Yet, I remained frozen in shock. This place, where we had come each day to learn and play, had become hostile and unrecognizable. The sense of security I had always felt within the school's walls was shattered, and my trust in the protective shield that was my teacher had been obliterated. Through all the noise internally and externally, Marshall's cries and desperate attempts to re-enter the room were louder than any other voice. After what felt like a long time, the teacher shouted, her voice strained, as she tried to regain control over the chaos that had taken over the classroom. Like well-trained dogs, we all fell silent, but my trust had been shattered, and my mind couldn't fully grasp what was going on. And then, like a boom of thunder jolting through you in the silence of the night, the intercom sparked to life. The principal's voice filled the room. He said the intruder had been captured, and that we should return to our normal classes. The tension slowly began to lift, but the damage had been done. The lights were turned back on, and Marshall was returned to his desk. But nobody's heart could return to learning at that point, not even the teachers. The room was filled with shaken faces, unspoken fears, and an underlying realization that our innocence had been shattered. We were just children, and we had witnessed a glimpse of the darkness that could exist in the world. I was just another face in the sea of cubicles. My day started like any other. I arrived early, used the restroom, prepared a cup of coffee, and booted up my computer, ready to work through the never-ending flood of emails. My job was monotonous and stressful, but amidst the tedium, there were a few co-workers who brightened the daily grind. Our office was caught in a whirlwind during this time. Layoffs were rampant, teams were being shuffled between departments, and promotions were taking place at the same time. I felt the sting of disappointment when a promotion I had been working hard for went to someone who, in my eyes, didn't deserve it. But what stung even more was that this colleague was nothing more than a drinking buddy of one of the executives. Despite my own frustration, I dutifully continued on with my work. My colleagues and most people from other departments consistently turned to me for help, knowing that I could be relied upon to resolve their issues. It was my own silent affirmation that I was, indeed, worthy of that promotion. This morning, it was the head of our sales department that came up to my desk. We talked about the promotions, caught one another up with the most recent rounds of layoffs, and then if any changes had occurred within each other's departments. Afterwards, he asked me to look into an issue someone from his team was having with our system. He started to show me one of the sales orders with this issue when, without warning, gunshots echoed through the office. My office has 4 floors. The main entrance is in the middle of the building, while stairways and side entrances are on the left and right sides of the building. The sound of the gunshots came from the stairway. I looked around as other heads started emerging from their cubicles. Panic gripped us, eyes darting in search of guidance. In that moment, I felt the urgency to act. Rising from my desk, I directed everyone to follow me toward the main entrance, away from the stairwell. For the circumstances we found ourselves in, everyone was surprisingly organized. I had imagined this scenario being a stampede of people stomping and screaming, but the opposite had occurred. Everyone had looks of fright on their faces, but we remained composed. My heart was pounding on the inside as we quickly made our way out of our wing. Since the sound came from the stairway at the end of our wing, and waiting on the elevators in the middle would take too long, I was directing everyone to the stairway on the opposite side of the office. As we turned the corner to pass the elevators, we confronted the source of the gunshots, a recently laid-off security guard standing over the head of our company. Our company head was wounded, but he appeared to still be alive. My eyes locked with his, and in that instant, we shared a recognition of the impending dread. The security guard aimed the gun at me. The employees who followed me here, once orderly and composed, fled like roaches for the side entrance from where we had come. I stood still and slowly raised my hands, feeling an uncanny calm wash over me. It was a calmness born of empathy and shared experience. This security guard and I exchanged small talk almost every morning. Because of our conversations, I felt like I could connect with him because I too had been laid off from my previous job. In a measured voice, I began to speak, assuring the gunman that everything would be all right. I told him that I too know the pain of job loss intimately. I recounted my own experience, shared with him that it gets easier over time, and most importantly, it is not his fault. As my words flowed, thoughts of my current job started to creep up. The relentless pursuit of job security that had led to many late nights with early mornings, missed events for my children, and a strained relationship with my wife. I silently wished for the security guard to pull the trigger, to break the cycle of despair. But then, in an instant, something shifted. The cold touch of steel against my chest triggered a response. In the blink of an eye, my left hand pushed the gun aside. My body pivoted to the left, and my right hand clamped onto the former security guard's face, thrusting him against the unforgiving elevator doors. Again and again, I bashed his head into those doors, each forceful push growing with strength reflecting the absurd lengths I had gone to for this company. I had lost myself in that moment, reverting to some force nurtured deep within me that had laid dormant for a long time. I came to when the head of sales pulled me back, and the former security guard's body crumpled to the ground. Some people called me a hero for my actions, but I am not sure what was released on that day, nor am I sure how different I am from that security guard. I have always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. The urge of wanting to experience more in life pushed me through my studies in pursuit of my goal of working at a high level in a military operation team. Partaking in a journey that not many others have done before brought a rush of excitement. During my time on this team, I was selected to be a participant in an experiment to further space travel. The goal was to simulate an isolated group and analyze its effects on the human psyche. Little did I know that I was about to embark on a journey into the darkest corners of my own mind. I entered the facility with a sense of purpose, understanding the challenge that lay ahead. The facility itself was a technological marvel, equipped with advanced equipment and all the necessities to sustain us during our time away from the outside world. Everything except Wi-Fi and cell service. With our communications severed, we were plunged into complete isolation. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. We maintained our daily routines, conducted research, and reported our findings. But as time passed, subtle changes began to unsettle us. There was an oppressive heaviness in the air, and it felt as if the walls themselves were closing in. Paranoia crept into our minds like an insidious fog, seeping through the once cohesive group. The weight of isolation began to gnaw at our collective psyche, and with each passing day, the atmosphere of the facility grew more tense, suffocating our once optimistic spirits. Doubt, like a festering disease, spread within our ranks. Whispers of hidden agendas and conspiracies among the researchers circulated like wildfire. Suspicion cast a long shadow over our interactions, turning comrades into potential adversaries. We found ourselves questioning not only the nature of the experiment, but also the intentions of our fellow participants. Even the facility's AI systems, initially designed to be our benevolent companions, exhibited strange and unsettling glitches. Simple requests yielded baffling responses, and at times, it felt as if the AI had developed a malicious intent of its own. The blurring line between human and artificial intelligence only heightened our sense of unease. It wasn't just the AI. The entire facility seemed to conspire against us. Lights flickered erratically. The ventilation system emitted strange, haunting sounds that echoed through the metallic passageways, and our sleep-deprived minds twisted these everyday occurrences into sinister omens. As our grip on reality continued to slip, we turned to documenting our experiences, hoping that rationality could anchor us in the face of mounting chaos. But it became increasingly challenging to differentiate between genuine observations and the hallucinations that now dominated our lives. In this environment of distrust, even our most carefully recorded findings came under scrutiny. The lines between fact and delusion blurred, and we found ourselves caught in a maelstrom of uncertainty. Our faith in science, in each other, and even in ourselves began to erode, and we were left with a burning desire to unearth the truth behind this malevolent experiment, even as the boundaries between reality and illusion continued to blur. The real descent into madness began when we started experiencing vivid hallucinations, Ghostly figures appeared in the sterile corridors, and voices from unseen sources echoed in our ears. We witnessed impossible events and felt shadows moving on their own. Hallucinatory experiences became our new reality. One day, I saw a reflection of myself that behaved independently, prompting questions about the nature of reality and identity. Conversations with people who weren't present became common for everyone, and the lines between the real and the hallucinatory blurred. We continued to document our experiences diligently, but it became even harder to distinguish fact from fiction. We were convinced that there was more to our isolation than met the eye. Suspicion turned into a burning desire to uncover the truth behind the experiment. We scoured the facility's records and discovered inconsistencies in our own reports. Surveillance footage showed gaps in time and manipulated events. Paranoia was replaced with a deep conviction that we were pawns in a larger game. Our quest for answers led us to a hidden chamber beneath the facility, containing files and documents that unveiled the experiment's true nature. It turns out that we were part of a project aimed at pushing the boundaries of human resilience under extreme conditions. The hallucinations, the paranoia, and the manipulation of our perceptions were all carefully orchestrated. As we confronted our captors and demanded to be released, we stood on the threshold of the outside world, but we couldn't be sure if we were truly free or if the experiment's influence still lingered, waiting to draw us back into its grasp.